Hi, this is Mark Skaiffe, and you're watching Lightning Fast, the history of Winfield Racing.
1000.
Well, I was probably a little bit lucky because my parents were involved in motor racing from the probably early 70s through to the 80s, and my dad drove touring cars for that period, and I used to go along as a little bloke and have a look, and I was always interested. When I was 14, I started in go-karts, and that's probably the way that most professional race drivers start out, and I did that for a few years and then moved into cars. I drove in a Ford Laser series, a one-make Ford Laser series to begin with, and then at the end of 1986, Fred Gibson wanted to put some young guys on, and he already had Glenn Seaton driving for his team, and he asked whether I'd be willing to drive also, and I moved from up on the New South Wales Central Coast at Gosford down to Melbourne, and I've been in Melbourne now for about 9 years. So that's been a great way, and obviously a big step for me in terms of driving for a professional team in that 9-year period. People and companies do motor racing for different reasons, and the cold hard reality is you're out there to win. So that's the most significant part of it, but in terms of your overall involvement, we try to enjoy our racing, and we try to have a good time in doing so. We're probably a little lucky that we can earn a living out of our hobby, but overall, yep, the success is the thing that you do it for.
Then there's Jim Richards, winner of the Shell Australian Touring Car Championship and Tooheys 1000.
Well, I think what really drove me towards motor racing was that my father was a mechanic, and he was a motorcycle beach racer on occasions. And I went to work for a chap in New Zealand sweeping the garage floor at a mechanical workshop, and he was a midget car racer. So at that stage, the first thing that I could do mechanically was really race go-karts. So with my family's help and Dad's help, we got a couple of go-karts, and then slowly progressed through the different classes to touring cars. Touring cars was really all I could afford, or all the family could afford at that stage. And so the natural progression was obviously to go to bigger and better touring cars, and so on until I came to Australia. I enjoy the camaraderie between the team. I enjoy driving cars, and I enjoy going to the meetings. But I always said when I stop enjoying it, I probably would retire. But at this stage, I've got no thought of that, and I'm still enjoying it as much as ever. Although some of the results lately haven't been as good as I would have liked. But you've got to take the hard times with the good.
Shake hands with Fred Gibson, the astute team manager of Skaiffe and Richards.
To be successful in motor racing, it takes many years of knowledge. It takes a good team backing. Like, I can only do my job as good as the people around me. And I believe having our Winfield sponsorship in the last 4 or so years, the right people on the job, and the right product in the Nissan GTR at the time we joined Winfield, I think that's made the team quite successful, and it's made my job a lot easier. There's a lot of people say I'm a hard person, but I think over the years you tend to mellow, and I think probably 10 years ago I might have been a hard boss, but these days I think I'm probably a bit too soft the way I do things, but I think I still can get the job done reasonably well. And I think the results speak for themselves and what the team's achieved.
Jim won't find many more passionate people around than Mark Skaiffe, who is also a respected technician. Listening to Skaiffe run the rule over a V8 Holden is akin to Bart Cummings analysing the form of a Melbourne Cup candidate. It's definitive to the extreme. He knows the car back to front. A steely look mirrors this young man's demeanour. It has often left him wrongly accused of brashness. In Australia, there is no more aggressive driver around. Yes, to Mark Skaiffe, winning is the only thing that matters. He goes fast and readily admits to torturing the car.
We're very below average losers. That's the way it should be. The day that you're like coming second, you should go and do something else. So, I think the team are pretty committed to winning, and that's been an attribute that, in the main, you don't have to try to evolve, you don't have to try to coax that into people. They've got it or they haven't. Well, to describe what's required to excel in touring car racing, is a very complex thing. As I said, the team makes a big part of that up, and their commitment to it. As a driver, it takes obviously a huge amount, because just like any sportsman, there's testing and practice and fitness and the psychology of it that are very, very important aspects to your overall performance, and to continually try to be competitive or succeed is demanding. So yeah, overall, probably people don't understand the demands. People look at touring car racing from the outside and think, what a fantastic way to spend your weekends, but when you've got 30 guys full-time going motor racing, it's much more than a lovely weekend away. I would say that the people that make the team up are the most significant part of what's made it such a great team. The the guys that we've got and their commitment to their success, you know, their motivation, their engineering expertise, their commitment to, you know, being 100% motor racing personnel have, you know, made a big, I'd say, dent in the success of the team overall. You know, I'm involved in the team every day, so, you know, you're trying to be at the workshop and be involved in running the workshop, and the engineering side of the cars is extremely high tech. We have entrance groups, we have sponsor liaison, we have the normal driving duties of promotion and as I said, testing and fitness and all those things that you do. Overall, as I said, I couldn't explain the amount of time that's required to do it, but, you know, if you said it was 100 hours a week, that wouldn't be enough. Well, in the sort of minimal spare time that we get, you know, I enjoy having a hit of golf and water sports and bits and pieces. I like having, you know, friends around and have a twoies or two and a mucker about. But, you know, basically in the race season, I'd have to say that there isn't a lot of spare time. So, you know, my wife Belinda and I tend to spend a bit of time away ourselves, just sort of trying to get back to normality almost away from the race scene.
To Fred Gibson, Skaiffe is like a son.
Mark's a good young guy. Mark sort of, I suppose, when we took him on at sort of 19 or 20 years of age and brought him along into the sport and then joining Winfield Racing, I think Mark's matured a lot. I think Mark now at 27 years of age is probably the brightest prospect in Australian motorsport. He's aggressive. He hates me calling him aggressive, but he is aggressive. He's professional. He's committed to 110%. He expects everyone around him to be committed to 110%, which I think that's good for the team. And I think probably Mark's, in his own way, he's forced the team to do things to make the team go better. And I think really he's got a life ahead of him in motorsport, and I think really he could sort of go anywhere he wants to go in motor racing as a driver.
Gibson displayed paternal concern when on January 19, 1995, Skaiffe wound up in hospital after crashing his car at the bottom of the straight at Eastern Creek in a practice round for the upcoming annual Winfield Triple Challenge. The always resolute Skaiffe bounced back and won the only round of the Australian Touring Car Championship held at the Creek. For 42 laps, he thumbed his nose at the corner that almost stole his life to stave off serious challenges from Peter Brock and Glenn Seaton. Skaiffe is ignorant of the word fear.
Well, I can't really describe it because I don't remember it. So, you know, I arrowed off in the rain at the end of the straight at Eastern Creek, going pretty quick, and fired into the fence and destroyed our test car. So, you know, that's basically as much as I can describe, because that's all I know is the fact at the end, you know. Yeah, that was it was probably in lots of ways the biggest part of that was that it set us back for the season. We lost development time, we lost one of our cars, and basically from there you struggle. You know, when you should be out developing, we were building race cars, and you know, that put us back probably a month. In that respect, that was probably the biggest problem.
Jim Richards is a motorsport icon, the winner of a glut of major championships in Australia and his native New Zealand. He earned the nickname Gentleman Jim for his compassion and fair play on the racetrack. But the crowd reaction to Jim and Mark's win in the 1992 Tooheys 1000 got under the great Kiwi's skin. He vented his feelings at the jeering and booing in terms that have become motorsport folklore. Richards has a penchant for racing, regardless of the make or year. He lives to compete. The highlights are many and varied.
Well, I think some of the great moments for me would have to be '87 when I won the Touring Car Championship for BMW. And that year we were in a pretty strong battle with Glenn Seaton, who drove for Fred Gibson that year. And it was either Glenn or I that could win it, and I won it. So I suppose you could say I had a hand in taking a championship off Fred. But probably the best of the lot was 1990 when I won the championship for Fred in a Nissan. So I enjoyed that thoroughly because of the fact that I had the hand in him not winning one in '87. But I think one of the things I always remember was with Winfield in '92 when I crashed the car at the top of the mountain at Bathurst in the rainstorm, and you know, went from thinking that I'd ruined the team's chances completely of coming anywhere at Bathurst to when I got back to the pit area, you know, quarter of an hour, 20 minutes later, pretty dejected to find out that all of a sudden we'd won, and that was from an emotional low to an emotional high pretty quickly. I personally put more enjoyment in winning a touring car championship than winning a Bathurst race, only because a touring car championship is over 8 or 9 rounds, where Bathurst you only get one crack at it. A small thing like a puncture or someone else's accident can ruin Bathurst for you completely. So I suppose to win it is something special, but I'm probably more inclined to like to win Touring Car Championship. I've enjoyed all the circuits for different reasons. They're all different shapes, they've all got different corners, and I think if you've got a favourite and you've got one that you don't like, well, obviously you're going to not go good at the one you don't like, and you might tend to think that the favourite one is one you should go well at. So I haven't really got a favourite. I've enjoyed all the tracks I've been on.
But if there isn't a preferred venue, surely there's one car that stands out from the crowd.
I think the favourite would have to be the GTR. They were so, you could say, mechanically superior at that stage. They were so good to drive, having a four-wheel drive and a twin turbocharged engine with about 650 horsepower. To me, the GTR was probably the highlight.
Well, to be honest, I don't really have a favourite car, to be honest, because the day that you have a favourite or whatever the case is, you don't put the effort into the ones that aren't your favourite, you know. So whatever race car you get in, you tend to just want to drive the wheels off whatever it is. And, we've had a lot of cars over many years. I'd say probably the best driver's car that I've driven would be the Lola Formula Brabham car that Winfield had in 1993. And it was a car that, overall was, for me personally, a particularly satisfying car to drive. It's funny because you look at the car in an engineering sense and you think what a fantastic piece of machinery, and you see the work that goes into the cars and, how much effort the guys put in to make them well presented and professional, and you get in and you really, you feel at home in that respect. But once you start to drive it, you feel like it's just a box, and you try to get this box around the circuit as fast as you can possibly get it around, and whatever you've got to do to achieve that, whether it's nice to the car or not, is what's done. So you do have a bit of a split personality in that respect. For most race drivers to have a reasonable knowledge of the car is, almost a prerequisite. You've got to have an affinity with it, and to understand the car and to make changes to the car to make the car better for you to drive, you've got to be able to understand it. And then in a race sense, if something's going wrong or the handling of the car changes or there's a particular problem that might occur, you need to be able to understand those things and be able to rectify it if you can. And to have a mechanical knowledge is paramount to your success.
Speaking of
the adrenaline part of the speed aspect to motor racing, to me, has never been one. When you drive down the straight at Conrod at Bathurst at 280 k's, and the guy alongside you is doing 275, and the guy in front of you is doing 290, and the guy behind you is doing 260. It's like driving across the Harbour Bridge. One guy's doing 30, and the other guy's doing 40, and the other guy's doing 50. So it's not a problem. The speed part of it has never been a buzz, really. It seems strange, and most people think that that's the major criteria, but for me it's never been. The only reason you're going quick down Conrod, if you put your arm out the window, your arm would fly backwards. I wouldn't know how fast the car's going. It doesn't bother me at all. When you do it for a living, you do get a bit blasé about the speed aspect, and for me, the only time that you really know that you're going quick is when you have a mechanical failure or you spit off the road, having an accident or something, when you're at a part of the circuit where you're going particularly fast. And in that sort of aspect, that's the only way that I can associate the speed almost. No doubt there's inherent dangers, and there's particular parts of circuits around Australia that are particularly dangerous. But you've got to look at the fact that nobody wants to fire off the road. You're trying to drive on the black stuff, and the times that you don't, that you run the risk of having an accident. In terms of motor racing, it's a harsh reality that when you go racing and you drive race cars at 10 tenths, you're going to crash one every now and then, and as I said, nobody wants to, but that's how it is.
World of touring cars, there is no sharper unit than the one headed up by Fred Gibson, the man they call the professional's professional. He's poured every cent of sponsorship back into developing his cars. To start with, Gibson recruited top drivers in Glenn Seaton and Jim Richards before Mark Skaiffe bowled along. Then came the car, the Winfield thoroughbred called the Nissan GTR, turbocharged four-wheel drive, the Mike Tyson of touring cars.
I think really the GTR was the best motor car I've ever been involved with as a race car. Nissan took many years to build the best touring car, and they built the best touring car, and it became very successful. It was very difficult in the last couple of years to sort of leave such a high-tech car. It was very difficult for the team to leave such a high-tech car and not have the sort of innovative things that car had in it, and to go to something like we're racing now, and the form of racing, which is like, I suppose, Ford and Holden racing. It's very competitive, very close. It's been very difficult probably for myself adjusting to this sort of racing, because we talk of parity all the time and having the cars very equal. So it makes it, to me, in one way, you work a lot harder to make your package a better package to beat the other guys, but also the innovation's not there like it was in the GTR. I think in V8 racing the advantages are more or less sort of introduced by your own team and sort of trying to do something better than most of the people can do, because the regulations are such that most things you cannot modify to a certain degree and then you can't go over that. So like within those limits you have to sort of, how can I say, make the car more innovative in those areas. Like an engine, for instance, you've got to work very hard to find more horsepower than anyone else. Now, all that cost is money and time. And I think really they're the things that make your team work harder within the regulations to try and make the car as a better car or give you that edge on other people. When you look at other teams and development they do, I think development all relates about how much money a team has to spend. And I think the top teams all spend the same sort of money on development and the same sort of time. And you tend to try and keep in contact with what other people are doing, but like in the racing these days it's very difficult to do that because it's all locked doors and sort of security everywhere. So I think really to know what other people are doing, it's only word of mouth of mechanics or things you hear outside say just get on and do your job and do your own development the way you want to and don't copy anyone else. And then once you have the amount of money to do the job, then it's a matter for the team owner or manager to sort of split up to sort of where you want to spend your money on to get your job done. And you can have the best driver. You could have Nigel Mansell driving for us tomorrow and he wouldn't do any better job than Jim Richards and Mark Skaiffe. So I think you can't have one outstanding item in the package. You've got to have everything doing very well. You're manufacturing your product, your sort of drivers, and sort of like, I think there's about 5 things in a package. I always say, you haven't got the right tyre contract, you haven't got the right budget, the right drivers, and the right team personnel, and the right technology, you're never going to win races sort of thing. And if you haven't got all those collectively together, you're not going to be successful. If one falls foul and gives you a problem, you'll fall behind the pack.
Rain, hail or shine, the Nissan GTR blew the opposition off the track literally in 1992 when it outlasted the field to win the Tooheys 1000 on a rain-lashed Mount Panorama circuit. So dominant was the Nissan GTR that the sport's ruling body CAMS outlawed the car, even after imposing weight penalties. The Winfield colours were up for grabs and Gibson lost sleep over whether to race Holden or Ford. The Holden package proved more appealing, and in 1993, Skaiffe and Richards went close to another Tooheys 1000, going down to staunch Holden campaigner Larry Perkins. But Gibson and the Holden V8 soon became acquainted. In 1994, Skaiffe, out to prove that he wasn't a one-car wonder, streeted the field to win his second Shell Australian Touring Car Championship. He stormed to the lead with 3 straight victories in the 10-round championship, and the further the season went, the further he increased his lead. Skaiffe mastered the Holden with such confidence that he had won the championship with a round to spare.
I think that to win a touring car championship over a 10-race series or whatever is especially hard, you know, because to win Bathurst, for instance, is a very tough day's work, but it's one day. To win the touring car championship in 92 and 94, and probably more recently the 94 success for me was the best, because we're in equipment that everybody was saying that we had an advantage in Nissan days in 92, so the 94 success in all the same cars was you know, a great factor in our relationship with Winfield.
George?
Well, I probably really haven't got a hero, but, you know, in terms of guys that you really respected as race drivers and looked up to, there's been a lot. You know, locally, as I said, Colin Bond and Peter Brock and those sorts of guys from years ago, Pete Gagan, and then overseas, you know, the Alan Joneses of the world, the more recently Ayrton Senna. There's lots of guys that you look up to as, you know, especially good racing drivers and especially good for the sport. So, you know, in terms of heroes, I probably haven't got a single one. I've probably got a few that I've always admired.
We haven't got any hard and fast favourites. I've enjoyed all the circuits for different reasons. They're all different shapes. They've all got different corners. And I think if you've got a favourite and you've got one that you don't like, well, obviously you're going to not go good at the one you don't like. And you might tend to think that the favourite one is one you should go well at. So I haven't really got a favourite. I've enjoyed all the tracks I've been on.